Welcome back to the iVue Robotics channel. If you haven't been here before, you may not be familiar with Develop Air, but even if you've been here, seen Develop Air in some of our other videos, you may notice that it looks quite a bit different. And we actually have a few different Develop Air models now. Right here, you see three in front of you, starting from our base model, Develop Air, that can carry a 3-pound payload, our Develop Air Mini, that can carry a 1.5-pound payload, and our Develop Air XE, that can carry up to a 5-pound payload. What you don't see pictured here is our Develop Air HP, which can carry a 7-pound payload. It's essentially in the same form factor as our Develop Air XE or our standard Develop Air. It has the same length boom arms at 4.5 inches, or actually 4.75 inches, as our standard Develop Air model, but with the larger KDE motors that our Develop Air XE model comes with. Fairly refined for a DIY drone. You can kind of think about this base Develop Air as almost a DIY DJI Phantom. The more that you want to carry, you want to step up to Develop Air XE or Develop Air HP. If you're wanting to fly more indoors, we have a Develop Air Mini for you. And even better yet, if you're totally just focused on software development, focused on doing indoor flights, we do have a Develop Air Micro in the works as well that is designed to carry a 1/2 pound of a payload, and where our Develop Air Mini starts at $999 and works its way up in price. Right now we have the Develop Air at a base price of $2,500. We're more than likely going to be cutting that, maybe even by the time this video goes live, and then another $500 more for the Develop Air XE, and then another $500 more for the Develop Air HP. But again, if you think, wow, $2,000, $3,000, even $1,000, that's way too much money for me to spend on a drone like this. Well, you could actually build a Develop Air for about $850, as we have it built here, where you could build a Develop Air Mini for about $400, as we have it built out here. So again, you could save quite a bit of money if you're willing to, roll up your sleeves, put in some elbow grease, and do the build yourself. But whatever route you take, we're going to be more than happy to support you building Develop Air on a DIY basis, or of course you buy it from us and we'll be with you at every step along the way. From the prop size difference, you spend 10-inch props on the standard Develop Air. Those are just quick release props like you would be familiar with if you've ever flown one of the DJI Phantom models. Same with the Develop Air Mini, you have those quick release props but of an 8-inch size. Once you step up to the Develop Air XE, you have 15-inch propellers, and all three of these models operate on a 4-cell battery. Where the Develop Air XE and the standard Develop Air use a 4S 8,000 milliamp hour battery, Develop Air Mini just uses essentially a battery half that in capacity, a 4S 4,000 milliamp hour battery. Each of these Develop Air models are good for about 25 to 32-ish minutes of flight time. And then our Develop Air HP that uses a 6-cell 8,000 milliamp hour battery will actually get about 36 minutes of flight time. Now, of course, you're not going to get all that flight time once you start adding on payloads, but of course, that will allow your drone to do much more than it would otherwise be able to if you had nothing attached to it. So one of the example attachments I want to show off is our claw machine that we have here. So this is basically the same sort of mechanism that you would see on many delivery drones to lower down packages to the ground, but we've kind of gamified the experience with Develop Air and making the world's largest claw machine game. Maybe worthwhile checking out our couple videos we have about that. And this is actually the payload mount underneath our Develop Air models. Each have a rail. We are actively working on improvements, not just to the mounting mechanism for Develop Air, but really across the board. They're all going through continuous iterations and improvements. But for now, you could just actually slide on your payload, locks into place on the rail, and you can quickly swap between claw machines, dispensers, other deployment mechanisms. We have a weather monitoring mod kit in development, but of course we really want you developing and designing your own mod kits or payloads for Develop Air. Well, how do we actually get those payloads to interface with Develop Air? Well, one of the new changes that we've made, again, across all these Develop Air models is the addition of a standardized 4-port side plate. So if you're familiar with the Pixhawk flight controllers that are standard in a lot of custom or DIY Arducopter drones, you'll know that there's ports 1 through 4 typically for the 4 motors like we have here in a quadcopter, leaving you, in our case, like 12 extra connections for retractable landing gear or other payloads that you want to attach. So while you still have access to all those connections on the inside of the fuselage, which we'll get into, we wanted to make it much easier for anyone to be able to access their payload or providing power and data connectivity to their payload using the side plate on the back. And now that's the same across all of the larger Develop Air models, whereas the Develop Air Mini actually has 2 side plates on the side, each with 2 ports. So fairly standard across the board there, but again, just makes it very easy for you to be able to attach your own payload, provide it the power and data connectivity that you need. Taking a look at the inside of Develop Air, another great change that we've made that used to drive me up the wall is anytime you wanted to get to the inside of Develop Air, we actually had 8 Phillips head screws that you had to remove just to open up the top cover. And now we actually just have a latch system. So on the 3 sides, you have latches with a little slide and lock on the rear side. And so now you can see on the inside, if you've ever seen a previous version of Develop Air, while it's still not as nice and pretty as we would like to make them, we're working on that. It is a heck of a lot cleaner than what it was previously using 4 individual discrete ESCs. Now we're using a FETTech 35 amp ESC. Again, you'll be able to see all of these components listed in our bill of materials that we have on our website. We won't actually pull up the Pixhawk flight controller so you can see that, because I don't want to do all of that before we take it out to the field and show you Develop Air in flight. But what you can see is it's pretty simple. There's very minimal soldering that you have to do if you want to build it yourself. Of course, no soldering that you have to do if you want to buy it pre-built from us. But otherwise, you can see we have servo extension cables going from the 4-port side plate on the rear to the FMU breakout board. We actually don't have any of the motors or ESCs plugged into the I/O PWM breakout board because using that FETTech 35 amp ESC, we actually just have that routed to telemetry number 3 on this Develop Air, actually standard across all the Develop Airs that you buy from us, or if you're building it, our documentation actually shows that that should go in telemetry 2, but basically opens up quite a few ports and quite a bit of spacing, not having nearly as much wiring by using that FETTech 1-wire protocol. Beyond the more traditional drone components, we also have this board at the top here, the LED adapter board, and that works in conjunction with various power system components ranging from the BEC to the I2C power monitor board down at the bottom to actually manage all of the lights on board, from the 2 battery status lights that we have at the rear here. I'll actually show you what those look like in the different states on the Develop Air Mini here in a little bit. And then we also have under the larger Develop Air models the 4 not the battery status lights, the position lights. And we have those light up just like an aircraft. So if you're from a background in manned aviation like I came from, this will be very familiar for you. So booting up the Develop Air, you hear the nice little jingle. And let there be light. We have red on the front left, green on the front right, white on the rear 2. And then again, you can see we're at above 50% battery life with the both of the battery status lights being green. Now going into the battery status lights on the Develop Air Mini, just want to show you what that looks like. So you plug in the Develop Air Mini similarly to the Develop Air, where we use the XT60 power connectors on the Develop Air models. We use the XT30 for the Develop Air Mini. You'll quickly see that the lights are essentially the same orientation, red in the front left, green in the front right, 2 white lights in the rear. They're just not extended out to the boom arms. Essentially, it's just way too tedious or practically impossible to get the light wires alongside the motor wires ran through these boom arm tubes, which, if you're wondering, again, you could see those in the bill of materials. These are all fiberglass boom arm tubes, weigh just the same, just as strong for all intents and purposes as carbon fiber, but just a heck of a lot more affordable. And then again, you could see on the rear, there's the battery status lights, essentially in the same location as you see them on the Develop Air. You'll see that they're actually yellow to indicate that the battery life is between about 30 or maybe 25% and 50%. And then if I unplug this battery and plug in this battery, and it reboots, you can see those lights stayed on for the yellow even after the battery was unplugged, a new battery was plugged in. There's essentially a memory in these lights to remember their last status. But now you can see the lights, the battery status lights are now green because this is a fully charged or near fully charged battery. And lastly, when you're running low, you'll be able to see the battery status lights turn red. And while you won't see it here right now, when you're under like 10 or 15%, we actually have that available in the code. So if you want to modify any of that code, you're more than welcome to. Again, part of making Develop Air open source. The battery status lights turn red. And again, if it's really low, like under 10 or 15%, they'll actually start flashing red. And that's beyond the battery fail safes that we have set up in software for your drone to automatically land or return to home. And then, of course, you could override those fail safes. So if you do know that you do have another visual status beyond just what's reported back on your controller or computer screen. As far as flying these Develop Air goes, that's something that we're actively also working on to make easier and easier beyond just building them and modifying them to your liking. Of course, you could just go buy a transmitter controller or use one that you already have. What we recommend is using these little modules that you could slot in the back. This is actually one that we 3D printed the little enclosure for, and inside is a Maytech MLRS MR900 module, and this will actually allow you to get all of your telemetry data back to this controller from your Develop Air, your GPS connection, all that information, even upload automated waypoint missions, and actually share all that information via Bluetooth to your phone, computer, or tablet. So if I were to power on that controller, we would start to see it blink green when I had a Develop Air connected to it. And then just using the Bluetooth built into a handheld computer like this or a laptop, again, even an Android phone works well. You could actually open up Q Ground Control or Mission Planner and get all of that telemetry data back on your phone and use Q Ground Control or Mission Planner just like you normally would if you were directly interfacing with either of them via USB with a telemetry radio like this. And so if you've seen the older versions of Develop Air, we actually had a Holy Bro telemetry radio. And now we are using, again, the Maytech MLRS system, which will actually support, again, not just the telemetry information, but in the case of the module that's used in the back of this Radio Master Boxer, also RC input for all the switches and the joysticks themselves. Now, if you don't want to go with something that complex or really that expensive, you could get these radio modules for about $30 and then just use your favorite gaming controller. Again, either connected via Bluetooth or more reliably USB in your computer, phone, or tablet. And again, you could use Q Ground Control or Mission Planner, but boy, do I have the treat for you. We have recently launched our own drone control application. If you go to worldsiVue.com, that's essentially our drone operating system. And within our drone operating system, we're developing many different applications to encourage drone usage, to help drone operators make more money with their drones, and of course, just make them easier to use and more capable. And as a part of that, we've built an application and are continuing to build this application, iVue RoboControl, or what we call iVue RC for short. So without having to download any programs on your computer, while it technically does work on phones, we really just recommend using a laptop or desktop computer with a Chrome or Chromium-based web browser. And you, again, just go to worldsiVue.com, open up the iVue RoboControl app, plug in your USB telemetry radio, plug in your USB controller, and you can fly Develop Air as easy as that. Again, no programs you have to download. So we'll see you out at the field. We are now out at the field with a Develop Air. Now we're going to go ahead and connect to Develop Air using our iVue RoboControl application. So now you can see Develop Air's position on the map. We're just going to hit connect to the STM32 virtual COM port. Once we hit connect, you can see the satellites, the number of satellites that Develop Air is connected to, its battery life in both form of percentage as well as voltage. We're going to go ahead and zoom in to Develop Air's position, and we're going to create a simple little waypoint mission here just by going to missions, clicking add mission, selecting drone 1, and now we can just select anywhere on the map. And there's a tree out there in the middle of this field. We're going to have Develop Air fly around the tree at varying altitudes ranging from about 15 to maybe 50 feet. So there's the first waypoint. Second waypoint, we'll have it climb up to about 30 feet, have it pause there for 10 seconds. Now going behind the tree, still just 30 feet altitude. Oh, and actually I messed up the altitude entering here. So this first waypoint, I'm going to keep at 15 feet. The second waypoint, I'm going to adjust to 30 feet. And I'm going to remove the pause time I accidentally entered in for that first waypoint. The second waypoint, I'm going to add back in that pause time for 15 seconds. And waypoint 3, I'm going to make sure that we're also at 30 feet altitude. Come back around the tree, still at 30 feet, and then we're going to end up right about where we took off, but at an altitude of 50 feet, and we're actually going to be a little bit further out than where we took off. So that should be our mission. If we want to change the waypoint colors at all, we can. And again, I think I just messed up entering the altitude here. You'll want to be more diligent than clearly I am in setting the altitude for each waypoint, and it never hurts to go back and check each waypoint before you actually start the mission. It's a lot better that way, you know, even if it goes not horribly wrong, still beats doing a rebuild if nothing else. So I think we have all the waypoints that we want to set up for this mission. Let's go ahead, hit back, and now we can go ahead and upload the waypoint mission. We just labeled it mission 1, but you can rename it if you want. You could also tell it to return to the takeoff location, so it'll actually come back and land by itself. But we're just going to set the initial waypoint altitude to 15 feet. We're going to hit upload, and then using the terminal, we could see that the waypoint mission was uploaded. Now if we go ahead and we're going to set Develop Air into loiter flight mode, we're going to then arm drone. Drone's armed, and then we're going to start waypoint mission. And so there Develop Air takes off, and it's now starting its mission. While Develop Air is doing that, I'm going to go grab the cable for the PlayStation controller. So Develop Air is perfectly just following its mission as we planned. You can follow its position along on the map as well. All of these features that you're seeing will continually to be updated, much like I talked about from the hardware perspective back in our office. So of course, if you see any changes that you think would be helpful to make Develop Air easier to operate, please leave a comment below. Come check us out in our Discord server, or even feel free to send us an email. I'm pretty easy to reach, and of course would love any help or suggestions to improve Develop Air. So as Develop Air is still just hovering there, we're going to go ahead and plug in the controller. All right, so now I have the PlayStation controller plugged in, and Develop Air is still just hovering there. Maybe I set a pause for longer than I thought I did, but in any case, I am going to select any button on my PlayStation controller. Now I could see the controller is connected here to drone number 1, the current Develop Air that's flying. And so now I'm gonna go back, make sure Develop Air is still in loiter flight mode, since it's actually started an auto mission. So I'm putting it in loiter flight mode, and now just using the controls, I can fly Develop Air. So as it's actually set right now, the controls are actually backwards. So when I'm pushing forward, Develop Air is moving backwards, and vice versa. So now I'm pushing forward, Develop Air is coming back towards us. I push left, that's correct. I push right, that's correct. Rotation is correct. Up and down is correct. But again, all of this will be fixed and addressed by the time it goes live in the production version. But worst comes to worst, even if you were to use our development version right here, right now, just know forward and backwards is reverse. So again, just for basic controls, if you've flown any sort of DJI drone, this will be just the same, just using your favorite PlayStation, Xbox, Nintendo controller. Up and down is on the left stick. Rotate is also on that same left stick. And then forward and back, left and right is all on the right stick. So now that we showed you how Develop Air can both fly via autonomous waypoint missions as well as through your favorite game controller, we're just gonna tell Develop Air to land exactly where it is just by pressing the land button on the computer. And this is all again through the iVue RoboControl app. You could use the controller, land manually if you'd like, but my thought is, why would you even want to use a controller if you never have to? And that's what we're continually striving to make it just even easier. All right, so we're back here with Develop Air. After we did a test flight, one other question that may come up quite a bit that I want to address is, typically you just have one battery installed within the battery brackets or between the payload bracket of Develop Air, but you could actually fly with 2 of these same 8,000 milliamp 4S batteries. Now, you will actually have to take out the Velcro straps to fit both in, and it is a tight fit, but that's actually good. You want your batteries staying in place, so when you have one battery in, you'll want to make sure it's held in place securely with the Velcro straps, and then the stops on either end will keep it from coming out. But if you have 2 batteries in, you will actually need to take out the Velcro straps. And then again, you'll want to make sure that both batteries are fully charged or charged to the same degree, just to avoid any unnecessary complications. And then there's really 2 ways of going about connecting both batteries to the one power port on the back of Develop Air. You could do what I did initially and made a Y-splitter cable. So this is the end that plugs into the back of your Develop Air, and then each battery plugs into those 2 ends. Or you could spend like the $8, $9 or whatever it is, buy one of these much cleaner little adapter pieces that just plugs into the back of Develop Air, and then again, both batteries will plug in. And like you'll see in our bill of materials, we actually have yellow XT60 connector versions of these extenders. We just made these extenders ourselves here. Again, you could do so quite a bit cheaper than buying them, but if convenience is what you're after, another few bucks will buy you one of these extender cables. What if I have my own battery? So you want to fly a Develop Air Mini with another battery than these, because these are like $70-$80. The standard batteries for the Develop Air and Develop Air XE are about $150. Well, of course, yes, you can use other batteries. You will actually have to adjust some parameters. And if you have any questions about how to do so, feel free to reach out to us. We'd be more than happy to help you figure out what parameters you need to change. But it is fairly straightforward. You just have to enter in the values of the new battery to replace the values of the old battery. Just wanted to go a little bit deeper into the components that we use within Develop Air, at least as it's built out and supported with our bill of materials online. So once you open up the bill of materials, the first line item you will see is the fuselage assembly. And so if you're not familiar with aircraft terms, that's essentially just the body of the aircraft. So in Develop Air, the fuselage is an octagon shape. And so the fuselage assembly includes all of the electrical components, the wires, all of the materials that actually go into that piece. So again, we'll actually open that up here. The first things that you'll notice is the top cover is attached via a GPS cable and a telemetry cable. You could just go ahead and remove those. I think you should be able to see the GPS 1 port and the telemetry 1 port. Those were just disconnected from. Again, the radio that's dangling here, covered in heat shrink, that was plugged into the telemetry 1 port, while the Holy Bro MAN GPS, this is actually being updated as we speak. So if you order a Develop Air within the next month or two, that may and likely will be changed with an upgraded, newer version. But for the time being, that's plugged into GPS 1, and that will remain the same even with the newer GPS units. Now going into the next piece that we touched on a little already are the side plates. So on the back you have a 4-port side plate for you to be able to plug in your mod kits or any other of your DIY payloads into. You also have a USB-C port for quick access. We actually have a little thin extension cable that runs on the inside from the USB-C port on the side of the Pixhawk out to the side of Develop Air. That way you don't actually have to open up the top cover anytime you want to interact with the Pixhawk without having to use a telemetry radio or some other form of wireless communication. The next thing that you'll see that, again, I touched on a little bit already is the lighting system up at the top of Develop Air. That's not really something you could buy off the shelf, at least unless it's off our shelf, because that's a board that we designed. Now, if you see in the bill of materials, you'll notice iVue Robotics is listed as the supplier. If you actually click the link, you'll see there's like 5 different pieces that go into this lighting assembly, and you could actually download the PCB file. So we have, I think it's a Gerber file and a few other files where you could go to your local PCB supplier here domestically in the United States. If you're in Europe, I'm sure there's plenty of places similarly, or realistically, if you're a hobbyist, probably going to go to like JLC PCB, PCBWay, a supplier like that, and just get the PCBs made for like $5-6 a piece. If you're like us, we order $20 at a time to reduce that cost a little bit. But if you're just building 1 or 2 for yourself, it might be a little bit more expensive. And then another kind of glaring piece that a lot of people may be interested in. You will have taken notice of the Pixhawk 6C already that we already touched on, but what we have not touched on is the firmware that it's running. So back when we originally started working on Develop Air, actually before it was named Develop Air, we were using open source firmware called PX4, and now we're actually using Arducopter. So Arducopter is now on like version 4.6.1. You'll likely receive that version, maybe 4.6 or newer. That supports pretty much all of the payloads that you would want to attach, even LTE modems if you want to fly Develop Air over the internet. So you have quite a bit of flexibility for adding payloads with ArduPilot, in our experience, much more so than PX4, at least if you're an independent developer, you don't have a big commercial team behind you. And another great thing about Develop Air, beyond the support that we're able to provide, there's a huge online forum, a community, if you will, behind ArduPilot. So we are oftentimes ourselves get a lot of help from the developers, not just behind ArduPilot, but also third-party manufacturers. So you might have seen in some of our other videos attaching gimbal cameras like those made by CE, SIYI. Again, you'll be able to get that same sort of help using Develop Air beyond just what you're able to get from us. So those are a few other points about the fuselage I wanted to touch on. But if you have any other questions about what's in the fuselage, again, feel free to reach out. I'll be more than happy to help. But the next part of the Develop Air build I want to touch on are the boom arm assemblies. While this may seem kind of inconsequential to someone that may be just building a drone for the first time, we've made quite a few improvements in our boom arm design since we, again, originally came out with Develop Air now close to 4 years ago, originally under another name. Now we have a twist lock boom arm design, which makes production exponentially easier. Originally, we had these fiberglass tubes that you actually had to drill a hole through, and if you didn't have a drill press with a 440 size drill bit, and I think it was actually a 3/32 size drill bit for 440 screws, it just became really hard to make sure the hole on the top of the fiberglass and the hole on the bottom of the fiberglass were aligned. But now we actually have these 3D printed cap pieces that go on the ends to make it so you don't actually have to do any drilling through these fiberglass tubes. Again, if you're building Develop Air DIY, you'll still have to cut the tubes down to the right size. In the case of the Develop Air and the Develop Air HP, that's 4.75 inches. And if you want to Develop Air XE to be able to spin the larger props for a little bit more efficiency with a 4-cell battery, you'll be cutting those tubes to 6 inches in size. But in any case, the boom arms just have the lighting wires in them. You'll actually notice that these are soldered on. If you're buying Develop Air or you're building Develop Air as spec'd out in our bill of materials, you'll actually see the white, yellow, white, red, and black wires. Those are what you'll receive, and it'll be those colors all the way down the wire until they're soldered on the light, and they're pre-crimped with these 4-pin ZH connectors. And again, those just plug into the LED adapter board within the fuselage. But these are very easy now to just install into the fuselage. Just run all of the wires through the cutout in the fuselage. And then one thing, it might be hard to see on camera, but there's a little nub that will align with the slot on the fuselage. And so you just align that nub with the slot. And then once it's aligned up, the boom arm is all the way up against the fuselage. You just lock it into place to where you could see through the screw holes, and then you just screw in 2 440 screws like we have here in this Develop Air. And then lastly, I think the part that we want to touch on with the Develop Air assembly, at least for this video, is the landing gear. Again, we use the same sort of fiberglass tubes, a thinner diameter. They're actually glued on. We use a 2-part epoxy to glue the landing gear, like 3D printed pieces, to the tubes. You could use like super glue or other glues. Just know they may leave white marks or other residue. So Gorilla Glue 2-part epoxy is what we found to be the best option, at least for those on a DIY basis. There are some better commercial alternatives. They do cost a little bit more, but they do come in larger volumes. You'll notice that there's no rail installed on this Develop Air. That's really optional, but if you want to fly with a payload that's quickly detachable, the rail is a good way to do so. But all of these payload brackets, either ones that we design or you design, are just installed with the landing gear themselves. So there's 2 Phillips head screws on each side. Those can be removed, and you can actually change out these landing gear with either extended landing gear we already have available as an option. We've also used retractable landing gear if you want to get the landing gear up out of the way of the payload. And then we've even experimented with little walker style landing gear. So again, Develop Air, beyond just the imaging or sensor sort of payloads, really expandable if you want to make Develop Air, a platform DIY drone of your own. Another FAQ. What about remote ID, says the nerd way out back. Yes, we do support remote ID with each of these Develop Air models, and of course we use remote ID on every single flight we go out and perform with Develop Air. So you'll see we have our 3 telemetry ports. The first one is already used by the telemetry radio. The second one is actually open. That will more than likely not be the case for you if you buy a Develop Air from us. All of the Telem 2 ports will be taken up. And then the Telem 3 port in this Develop Air is used by that FetTech ESC we covered earlier. The GPS 2 port is actually also usable as a telemetry port. So any of those open ports you could use your remote ID module in. We actually recommend the Drone Tag DRI remote ID module. Again, of course, if you are a person that needs remote ID, like everyone, of course, absolutely needs to use every single time they go out and fly. Now, hey, Jacob, what about me? I've already upgraded my Develop Air, taking advantage of it to the most, and I'm using all of the ports, so I can't even plug in my remote ID module. Well, yes, you can get on like the little stick-on remote ID modules that have their own battery power, and you have to replace the battery. But that Drone Tag DRI remote ID module I mentioned could actually act as a pass-through. So you could actually plug that into any of those telemetry ports, and then, for example, plug in your telemetry radio to the other end of that Drone Tag remote ID module. So again, Develop Air can and is completely compliant whenever it flies, as long as you choose to do so. And of course, we always choose to do so. So happy, safe flying. Thanks, FAA. Another FAQ. So what are the range of these Develop Air models? Well, I mentioned they will all get about 30 minutes of flight time, depending on the payload or really no payload that you have attached to them. That'll translate to a few miles, and I know that can differ quite a bit. But each model is capable of flying about 40 miles per hour. The Develop Air HP can fly a little bit faster, closer to 60 miles per hour. We will have eCalc, basically calculations that will show the max payload each model supports, the flight time, the estimated range that you can fly with, all alongside the bill of materials. So if you want any more in-depth information, again, just check out the downloads section on our website. If you don't see whatever you're looking for there, of course, feel free to ask any more questions, either through Discord or contact form, or again, just leave a comment down below, and we'll get to you as soon as we can.